Welcome to the Rock Music Alliance interview sessions. I'm your host, Cole Coleman, along with Claudio Pesavento from Mahogany Rush and the Chris Squire Band. On our show today,
Everybody's working for the weekend.
he's the keyboardist and one of the founding members of the multi-platinum iconic rock band Loverboy. And he's a film and TV composer. His honors, among others, include being inducted into the Canadian Musical Hall of Fame. Welcome to our show, Doug Johnson.
Hello, guys. Nice to be here on a sunny Canadian day. West
Yeah, it
Coast.
looks great.
Yeah,
We've got what's called June gloom over here where I'm at.
I've heard about that.
It's
Yeah,
called contrails.
yeah. Well, we're. It's like God every now and then throws us a bone, and we're happy to live up here. So it's nice. Life is
Cool, man.
Here we have plenty of chemtrails. That's what we have.
good.
They block the sun.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You guys get an inordinate amount of sunshine, and I think where I live, relative to Vancouver, we get the highest rate of sunshine in this part of the Western Canada. So nice to be here.
Sounds great. Sounds nice. Well, Doug, I noticed, of course, that this is the 45th anniversary year of Loverboy's first album, the self-titled Loverboy. Congratulations.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? If somebody had said 45 years ago, Doug, you'll be doing an interview celebrating your 45th anniversary year in 2025, I'd be like, I don't think so. I kind of doubt that will even be around by then. But here we are, and defying all of the odds. And yeah, we're just lucky to still be around and having fun and doing shows and living the life. It's been a remarkable, blessed career for sure.
Yeah, got to ask. I mean, 45 years together and like relatively few to no personnel changes except for when it was a must. So like, do you have any comment on that? Like how did you guys stay together all these years?
Well, I think basically we're unemployable in any other regard. So we need each other. Well, I don't know about that, but no, it's like a brotherhood. It's like a family. You go along, and I think basically we all appreciate each other. We're all different, different personalities, but we have a common interest of music, obviously, and we can handle each other's company. That's so crucial. And you've got to, I think, appreciate the fact that the sum is greater than the parts, and what we do as a band is remarkable. And we're just you have to put the needs of the band above your own needs sometimes, and I think that that sacrifice personally to basically allow for whatever the band needs to do ahead of your own personal thing is what probably accounts for our longevity in many ways.
All right.
Anyway, the good news is that this interview has not.
Yes. Well, you know what? We could go down that rabbit hole. We could open up that can of worms, but these are tricky times, and one must be very, aware of what one says. So, we're Canadians, you're Americans, and with all due respect,
I'm Canadian.
okay. There you go. Okay. Well, then I have a kindred spirit here, but I mean, it's all the same. I mean, culturally, we're all very, very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, we've definitely got a Canadian, unique Canadian cultural milieu. And I mean, Claudio, you speak French, and we have a First
Mais
Nation.
oui.
We're an incredible mix of European mongrels and First Nation people, and so here we are. The political climate is definitely something notable as of late, and we'll make the best of it. And I'm counting on playing. The first show that we played once all of this sort of kicked into play was in Georgia, and honestly, I didn't really know what to expect being a Canadian band. I thought, well, maybe these people aren't going to be very pleased that they're, the local city hired a Canadian band instead of an American band. And It didn't make an iota of difference. There was nothing said, nothing mentioned. They were just so happy to see us. It's about the music, and music transcends the
Yeah,
political boundaries. So
That it does. Yeah,
I,
that it does.
I'm happy to be part of that, and it's a diplomacy. So we
yeah.
wish you all the best, and I hope you guys wish us all the best. And that's probably all we need to say about that.
And
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
especially because I was born in Argentina, but you know, I end up in Canada to play music, and I know Canada is a place that is everything is peaceful. You can have like some stuff going on, like a heavy stuff going on in the news, whatever.
Yeah.
Not like here. Every day is like something happening here.
Well, it's a ripple effect, right? We're all interconnected. It's a global world, and when something originates somewhere, the efficiency of the news cycle and everything else. Everything just sort of happens, and you're aware of it. So, yeah, it's a whole new world for sure. And
Anyway, I was joking about that anyway. To break the ice.
I was just about ready to hit the e-transfer button here.
Well, Doug, what is the latest news from Loverboy? Any new releases coming or tours to announce?
Yeah, so this year we're doing a lot of one-offs. We've got a couple of shows coming up at the end of this month. One at a place called Vamp'd in
Oh yeah,
in
Las Vegas.
yeah, and then the next day we're going to be in Palm Springs at I think it's Agua Caliente, or no, Rancho Mirage. Sorry, Rancho Mirage. And then a week off, and then from then on, it basically is a lot of our own solo shows. We're doing a couple of hookups with Styx. I know in November we've got a mini tour that's being put together with Styx. We've done a lot of shows with them over the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, coming out of COVID, that was our first let's go back and play in front of people without masks kind of turning point. Went out with REO Speedwagon and Styx and Loverboy and had a great time. And we know all those guys. We've known them over the years, and it's always a happy reunion when we get together and share the stage with those guys.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, it's been 45 years, and a lot of those bands were around then too. So, I mean, you guys have gone through music history together.
We have, yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of curious that being humans that we are. We kind of get together and we look at each other and we goes, oh, I think Tommy's got another wrinkle there, and Lawrence is. I think he's lost a little bit of hair, but what the hell? We're still here, right? So
Yeah, exactly. I heard you mention, Counts Vamp'd, and we were just talking about that last week. Claudio was telling me that club is closing this month. I think their last day is like the 30th.
No, next month. Oh yeah, this month. Yeah,
Yeah, this
the
month,
end of
June.
month.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure everybody knows. So you guys are performing at Counts Vamp'd June 27th. So anybody who's in the area, get yourself down to Counts
I'm
Vamp'd,
gonna be there.
probably for the last time.
come on
So
down, Claudio.
enjoy the club.
Good to see you, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I wanted to find out, since it's the 45th anniversary, how did Mike Reno and Paul Dean meet up to form Loverboy in the first place? And then how did you get invited to join the original lineup?
Yeah. So many years ago, once upon a time in the universe, we were in a place called Calgary, Alberta, and I had moved there to make some money to go back to school. I had run out of tuition funds, basically, and I got a job in a mill there for a while, made some money, and then I started playing music in nightclubs, in cover bands. And Paul was playing in a band called Street Heart at that time. They were quite big in Canada. And then that situation ended for him, and he was looking to start a new project. He contacted me. And so him and I, basically, even before Mike arrived, were kind of plugging away in a little warehouse in Calgary, just kind of writing songs. He was singing, and, with the intention of bringing in a singer at some point. And then one day, Mr. Mike Reno showed up, and that's when things turned around. And the voice and the creativity and the personality and, the chemistry really started to kind of activate. And that would have been probably 1979. And then, so we busily put together a demo tape, which we hustled off to a guy named Bruce Allen, who,
Oh yeah,
Mike, Brian Adams, and
it's the big one.
Michael Bublé. Yeah, he's one of those big guys. And so he loved the tape, and said, well, why don't you guys move down to Vancouver? We were living in Calgary at the time, and I was kind of relieved because I missed home, and that was great for me. So went back home, and he put us on a pretty strict schedule of writing and playing, performing. So for the next essentially 6 months, we woodshedded by day in a warehouse in East Vancouver, writing new material. And at night, we would play from 9 till 2 a.m. And we would try out our new material. I mean, that's the best, most visceral way to see how a song is going to stand up, is to play it in front of people. And so that's what we would do. And we did that for better part of 6 months. We not once learned a cover tune. For whatever reason, people loved our original stuff. And we became kind of a cult following in Vancouver. Huge lineup, sold out everywhere. And so we thought, okay, well, we must have something here. So we started flying in some record company executives. And the first batch basically said, no, they're not ready. And we don't really hear the music as being viable at this point in music history and whatever. So after I would say probably 15 to 20 kind of rejections, we finally got a thumbs up from a guy named Jeff Burns out of Toronto. He was working for CBS Columbia Records, and I can vividly remember the moment walking up from after the second set of our song at a place called the Body Shop in Vancouver. And he passed me on the way down and he said, welcome to CBS. And I was
Wow.
So I called my mom. So I was 21, right? I had a girlfriend, but we were kind of on and off. So anyways, that's where it started. And he basically released funds for us to hire Bruce Fairburn, who was our producer on our first record, and Bob Rock, who was the engineer. And those were the early days of the Little Mountain phenomenon. And so we went in and recorded our eponymously named Loverboy with Turn Me Loose, The Kid Is Hot Tonight, Lady of the 80s. And basically we had been playing so much that the band was incredibly tight and polished and ready to go. So all we needed was some direction, and Bruce Fairburn provided that in spades, and off we were to the races. And then it came out. And I would say probably 6 months after that, we had still a few bookings left from our club commitments. And we were in a little place called Lethbridge, Alberta. And Mike and I were driving around in the rental car getting groceries for the band house. And we were listening to the local radio station, and The Kid Is Hot Tonight came on. First time we'd ever heard our music on the radio. So we pulled off, and it was like that scene out of Wayne's World where that was Mike and I for the entire 5 minutes of the song. And we high-fived each other and drove back and told everybody we'd heard our song. And that song really took off for us. And that basically brought up, the awareness of the band, and off we were.
Yeah, I love hearing the stories like that. Like the first time you hear yourself on radio, what a trip. I remember Paula Abdul was saying it was just a very serendipitous moment for her. She was going down Sunset Boulevard in front of the Tower Records store, very famous Tower Records outlet on Sunset Boulevard, where she had a billboard. There was a billboard of her, and at that very moment, for the first time, she heard one of her songs on the radio.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for you. It's like it's a really fun way to hear that you got a record deal. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and I think it was on AM radio too, which was kind of quite unusual. I don't think our car had a FM band.
Yeah. Well, plus
FM.
You mentioned back then at that time period, bands did play a lot of cover gigs and mix in their originals to test out. I mean, you could do that back then, so it's really great that you were able to. You can hone your songs live. You can the band is in a good rehearsal shape. It's great.
You get paid it's like a paid rehearsal. And
yeah, exactly.
Plus, you have the benefit of having immediate feedback on the validity of your song. So it's a great process.
Yeah, I miss those days tremendously right now.
oh no, yeah. I didn't realize you play with a band locally in LA.
Well, I've been a musician like all my life, and I played all the time, and through the late '80s through the '90s, and all kinds of bands, cover bands as well as original bands. I even played some of your music, of course.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to find out too. Yeah.
Thanks, Claudio.
Yeah. So at the time that you were recording Turn Me Loose on the first album, and then working for The Weeknd on the second album, Get Lucky, was there any sense that there was something special going on with these songs?
Well, all you can do is it comes down to those kind of private, special, intimate moments in the rehearsal hall where you're working on these songs, you stop and you start, and then you go back to you basically got the song is in these various um, levels of completion. And then sometimes you erase an entire part and try to figure out another part that's going to go, and then you come back to it. So it's a long process, and that really isn't even a generalization because it can be really quick too. There's no predicting how the creative process will go. But when you've got 4 or 5 guys in the studio, there's a lot of ideas floating around, and so we're all very respectful of one another. And I think that's to your point earlier about how we've stayed around for so long together. Is that, yeah, okay, we listen to each other, and you have the floor, and that sort of thing. So, but as far as knowing whether or not these songs are destined for greatness, you never know. You might think something. I'll be honest with you. When I first heard Paul come to the studio with Working for the Weekend, I thought, oh, okay, is that all you got? Is that honestly, I thought, well, I guess I can probably throw in a couple of
Yeah,
keyboards.
with the keyboards.
Yeah, and
Come to the rescue.
yeah, and then we'll see what we'll get out of this. And
I can see that, Doug. It's like when you think about that song as being introduced to you as just like a guy picks up a guitar and just plays that song, it sounds kind of funny or awkward, or it's kind of a geeky little thing, you know. But then you put it in the studio and you get the production happening, and it really comes to life. You know, the energy in the production, and it's like, wow, this is great.
yeah, and I mean, Matt, our drummer, just is a driver, and so his power and his choice of fills and all those other nuances, and in that regard, everybody's contribution creatively to that was made it what it was. But initially, you just never know. I mean, like I said, the Working for the Weekend was kind of a long shot for me. I thought, well, okay, well, what else? I mean, maybe there's something else on this record that might see the light of day here in terms of when it's over, it's got some good melodies and it's a great concept.
Yeah.
And
I like asking this question of artists because sometimes some artists do in fact say, yeah, from the time we started recording, there was just something incredible about this song. And sometimes that happens. And other times, just like you're saying, it's another thing that happens quite often is somebody brings in a song and the band really doesn't want to do it, or the record company says, no, we're going to leave that one off the record. And it's just like a song barely makes it onto a record and ends up being the big hit.
that's it so many times. Yes, it's so perplexing. And so what you do is you come up with your best stuff, and you put it into we didn't have computers back then. There was no Pro Tools, there was nothing. So basically we had our tape, like a cassette recorder, and it was sort of optimally placed so that it would get all of the different instruments. So we found the sweet spot, and we had a little monitor system, and we would record, and we would basically, that was the reference that we had for that. And so Paul would take the tapes home at night and listen through them and go, okay, this is good, this is working, this isn't good, but I got an idea for this. And so he kind of was the gatekeeper in a lot of ways with respect to the flow of ideas. And he was kind of almost the final arbiter. Although if we outvoted him as 4-1, then that wouldn't happen all the time. So, but yeah, going back to the point of when do you have these gems, and you honestly don't. It's basically up to the gods of the public. And
Magic.
yeah, it feels like magic sometimes because there's no way to quantify how good a song is. It's so subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the same thing with your song. There's also, like you just mentioned, the audience, when it really connects with the public at large. Like I remember when that song came out, Working for the Weekend, and everybody who was working, the blue collar workers, the factory workers, I mean, they really latched onto that song. It's an anthem,
I mean, that was in terms of timing culturally, that song was, you
Yeah.
couldn't get it in a better spot.
Yeah, when you're working the 9 to 5 life, you really are working for the weekend. You're just dying for Friday night to come around and Saturday night.
Right. I think originally the song was waiting for the weekend.
Huh?
And yeah, I mean everybody is waiting for the weekend also. And then during the recording, Mike just threw in the other option and everybody stopped and went, wait a minute, that's actually even better. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you make all the money, you spend it on the weekend.
Yeah.
That's what you're working for. You're living for it. You're living for the weekends. Like, I'm getting through 9 to 5, 9 to 5. The weekend.
Your fun day. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you guys were working on the song, loving every minute of it,
Yeah.
did you get to work on it with Mutt Lange, or did he come in and was part of the production?
So Mutt unfortunately wasn't able to get over to La Studio, just outside of Montreal, Morin Heights, which is where we were recording at the time.
The studio.
Yeah, La Studio. Yeah, ski resort up there. That was absolutely beautiful setting. It's right in the, it's got almost like something out of Provence. It's just amazing. So we were held up there and we got a tape. And our road manager said, you got to have a listen to this. This is a song that Mutt Lange, of course, by then, Mutt Lange's name was synonymous with AC/DC and Def Leppard. And we were like, are you kidding? He wrote us a song. And so we put it up on the main monitors in the control room and were blown away by the meticulousness of the production, the melody. He sang all the parts. He programmed the drums. He played all the guitars. It was a masterpiece. And we went, oh my God, pinch me. I cannot believe it. And so I actually spoke to him over the phone a couple of times just to get an idea as to what he was thinking about keyboard parts. And he was kind of gave me a little bit of direction, but he said, no, you're going to probably come up with some interesting things. So I was like, okay, great. And so that was his gift. And although he wasn't there physically, he was, sort of watching from afar, and we would rush air transport some takes, and he would give us feedback, and so it went back and forth, and ultimately we had this incredibly catchy song that was really yet another great big push for the band's popularity.
Yeah, super catchy. And when you think about it, it's definitely got that Mutt Lange style.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That stadium kind of, in fact, the whoa, that's something that you would hear at their soccer games a lot. And those kinds of melodies that are just sort of like a mass sort of gang vocal. And that's what he was so good at. He was just ingenious. I was a fan of his from Back in Black. And even we did a gig with the Boomtown Rats back in 1981 in Chicago at a nightclub that was the original proprietor was Al Capone, and it was an interesting mix of bands. It was Jim Carroll who had that song called "All My Friends That Died," so very punkish. He was a Pulitzer Prize winner too, very well read. I think he wrote Basketball Diaries. So he opened. We were sandwiched in between Jim Carroll and the Boomtown Rats. And so I did a little bit of homework on the Boomtown Rats. And of course, I Don't Like Mondays. That was actually produced by Mutt Lange. And
Wow.
yeah, so he's been around for a long time. I think he's from South Africa originally. And sorry about that. And so, then when AC/DC Back in Black came out, it was like, wow, okay, this guy knows what he's doing here. This is amazing. And then he did, Cars, Heartbeat City, and of course all the Def Leppard and that. So we were expecting something epic from him, but it was beyond, what we thought. And so we were so happy to.
Yeah, it must have been terrific. Absolutely terrific moment.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's pause for a moment here, guys, for a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to ask Doug about the recording industry of the 1980s and 90s compared to today, and a little bit about his early days, and we'll get to film and TV composing. And we'll be right back.
Attention guitar players, the Thimble slide allows you to slide and fret, freeing your slide finger. The thimble slide is a mini guitar slide designed to be worn on the tip of your finger, about halfway down your fingernail. When worn there, you can still bend your finger, and most importantly, it's allowing enough of your fingertip through so you can still press the guitar strings. With its patented shape, you can slide and fret while wearing the thimble slide. Visit thimbleslide.com. That's thimbleslide.com.
Hi, I'm Jessie Money. I'm the daughter of Eddie Money and also a singer in the Eddie Money Band. And you're listening to Rock Music Alliance.
We're back with Doug Johnson of Loverboy on the Rock Music Alliance. Doug, we were just talking a moment ago about touring. Fill us in on what happened last year.
Well, last year was probably a year in which we played more shows than we have since the 80s. We started off the year with a series of one-off shows, and then around about middle of June, we hooked up with Sammy Hagar and his incredible band, Joe Satriani, Michael Anthony, and it was Jason Bonham. And we basically were with them for the better part of 2.5 months. Absolutely incredible on so many levels. Personality wise, couldn't ask for friendlier, more accommodating guys than Sammy and Joe and Michael and Jason. Just very personable and no assholes. Like I think also most of the assholes are dead now, so good riddance. Anyways, I digress. So,
but still, yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's like with such successful people and such big names like that, you might think there'd be some clashing going on, but
right, yeah, no, but these guys have just got it going on, and
Well, maybe 40 years earlier.
oh, absolutely,
When
yeah,
they're younger, they're different.
that's
I
really true,
know.
Claudio. That's really true. It's like
We did with some shows with Van Halen back in the 80s, and it was a different time, and I went out one afternoon with Eddie Van Halen in Toronto, and oh my God, it was like a train wreck. I mean, I love the guys playing, and I could see inside there was actually a really nice guy, but for what he was on a bit of a mission for just kind of causing chaos, and so Valerie Bertinelli's brother is a big tall guy, he's about 6'3". We're in Yorkville and we're walking around. It's a beautiful day like it is today. People are sitting outside just having drinks and lunch and stuff. And Eddie's kind of crashing every table and sitting with people, and just because he wants to talk to people. He was, that's what he did. But you could see there was a level of annoyance that was starting to happen. And so I can't remember his name now, Valerie Bertinelli's brother would intervene at the right moment and get him out of these, rather dubious situations. So I said to him, I said, God, man, you got your hands full here. He says, oh, Doug, he says, this is a pretty good day, actually. But no, we played with, and we met them in Denver for the first show, and got a chance to meet Eddie, and they both came into the change room and welcomed us with open arms to the show. And we had a great time with them.
yeah, that's great.
Fast forward, 40 years, and Sammy's out on his own. Eddie's gone. Alex is nowhere to be found, and Dave has got his own thing going on. And Mr. Satriani definitely did his homework to respect the memory of Eddie's incredible virtuosity.
Yeah, I can imagine, even for anybody, that you're going to fill the shoes of Eddie Van Halen live. That's got to be pretty weighty.
One of the most daunting musical, quests you could imagine. But he did. He did a great job, and the crowds were great. They loved us. I wasn't sure whether that was even going to work because, different music, different vibe, and yet it all worked. And we had just a fantastic time with those guys. It was a really, really great tour.
Talking about different music, different vibes. Now I saw you guys opening for Journey, way back. at the Forum, which it was a tremendous show, But I was just wondering, we were just talking the other day with Jesse Money. Did you ever tour with Eddie Money?
Yes, we did. Well, we did not in the 80s. We did do it was with Eddie Money and Survivor and us. And we went back to the buses. This is before COVID. And yeah, we basically opened up for him. We did some theaters and some nightclubs and things like that. And yeah, it was great. He's a character. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's master of savory jokes. Like, yeah.
So
He just had endless supply.
Yeah.
But yeah, he worked hard every night for sure.
I found he had three brothers. I don't know which one is. I don't know if you see it.
And Drew. Okay.
David Patrick and Drew. Yeah.
Okay. What am I looking at there?
That's her brothers, David, Patrick, or Drew.
Oh, is that your Valerie's brothers?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was David.
Okay, David.
Yeah, that seems to strike a chord. So
Yeah, so about Eddie Money, yes, we were talking with Jessie Money, his daughter, and if you haven't heard, I mean, she and her brother Dez are carrying on the Eddie Money legacy. So they have the Eddie Money Legacy Band, and of course, she's branching out into her own solo music as well. So it's just kind of interesting,
Yes, yeah, they came to us when we played the Agora Ballroom up in, where is that? It's outside of LA.
Talking about Agora Country Club, is that it?
I think that's what it was. Yeah. They came to see us, and it was nice to see them since Eddie passed. We played 2 Tickets to Paradise for I think 3 nights after he died, in our set. And just as a tribute to him. Yeah. And,
that was a great song when it came out. It's just great. Like I say, the timing was just great. Like Working for the Weekend was perfect at the moment. 2 Tickets to Paradise was just great at the time too. So Doug, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say escapism, classic escapism.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're well, I'm happy to hear that. They're really good people. They were out there on the road with her dad quite a bit. So, and she was singing background, and she was very talented for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think she's starting to really come into her own now. She's starting to really focus. She's getting a focus on what she wants to do now, I think,
Hey.
Yeah. So Doug, how would you compare earning an income in the recording industry of the 1980s and 90s compared to today's industry? Are things better?
They're definitely different. Better is a very sort of subjective word. I think for somebody who, like myself, who was part of an industry that profited from the sale of physical objects, i.e., vinyl and then cassette and then CD and then all the various formats that were available back then, to see that transition into basically, atoms, molecules to bits and bytes, right? Virtual reality. And what's the impact of that? I think it's sad in some ways that we have lost, in some ways, the new generation doesn't have quite the same appreciation of the value of recorded music. And that's not to blame them personally. It is just a function of, basically, when you digitize something, you make it available for everybody. And then the argument, of course, is that it's part of my library, or I'm sharing my library. And all this litigious, murky area that exists now makes it very difficult for an artist to rely solely on his recorded music to make an income. That's my point. So back in our day, if I can be so bold, you would sell. I remember at its peak, I think Get Lucky was selling 250,000 a week, and yeah. And now I hear the stats on, Beyonce's new single, or I hear, Drake's new single, and they're going, oh, well, that moved 5,000 units this week. And I go, oh, wow. Well, that's the reality. And that is a function of streaming. You had Napster, and now you've got Spotify, and you've got all those things. I mean, I don't have an axe to grind, but I have definitely, your question to me was, does this affect income? Absolutely it does. When you're speaking strictly of, your reliance on your recorded music as your prime income, we were lucky. We sold not only albums, but then when they became reformatted as CDs, people bought our CDs too. So we had like this triple, effect of people buying our material, and that was extremely good timing on our part, considered only as just an income making sort of proposition.
Yeah, and of course nowadays they're streaming you guys, from Spotify and the like.
Yeah, and serious.
Except that those days, you had the radio airplay, and you make money from that too.
That's right. Yeah, so
That's something else I miss, radio airplay.
Right. Yeah. It's like, who has a radio? I mean, maybe Sirius FM and the XM, and but so we've gotten ourselves to a point which is arguably better, because now you can just cherry pick what you want to listen to. There was an argument about albums back in the 80s and to some degree in the 90s that were concept albums, and it was recommended that one listens to these albums in their entirety because there was an overarching story or an emotional journey that the artist wanted to take you on, which required you to listen to the album in its entirety. That's not so much anymore. We seem to be, and it's a function of our attention span too. We've got these 3, 4, 5 minute songs that now come crashing in. There's so much bandwidth and production going on in a lot of cases to get attention, and so they're I find the production techniques today that are ingenious. They're but they have to be to compete. So but then again, I mean, I'm speaking kind of like a musical mercenary here, which I'm not. I mean, I also understand that music is a very personal, private thing, and an artist strives to kind of find their voice and say what they want to say in their own unique way. So but the reality of trying to make a living in that scenario, I think one has to acknowledge that you've got to have your music recorded well. It has to be, don't expect to make a lot of money off of that recorded music. What you can hope for is that there will be a corresponding reaction when you go to play live. So now people are going to buy tickets to see you live, and then that revenue will help you, then you can make a living. You don't have to have a, second job.
What I miss about those days, Doug, is like you buy the record for the hit, and then you're curious to see what else this artist has to offer, and you accidentally then discover deeper and more meaningful songs. That's the thing I miss. Very often for me, it was what was on the B side that was more interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the popular tastes sometimes overshadow the range of the artist, and so that's where they recorded the entire album. You could get more of a sense of what that artist was really about by hearing everything on the album.
When I was a kid, I buy albums because I like the covers. I had some money, and then I was lucky enough that I bought the right albums. I bought Led Zeppelin, and I bought Yes, Pink Floyd. Like I was 12 years old. I had some money, and I went to buy all these albums, and I listened to them like, wow, I got like totally hooked on it. So.
Oh, the whole album, yeah.
The music, but also I was, my brother have albums from the Beatles and all those bands, Rolling Stones. You mentioned, whatever, Carole King or James Taylor, all those people.
Come on the turntable and you hear that little preliminary crackle, and then
yeah,
and then you're like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
you're in the journey.
And Doug, do you want to pause here for a second? You need a drink of water?
I do.
We'll be right back.
Well, Doug, let's take it back in time for a short minute and tell us, where were you born and raised, and how did you get into playing keyboards?
Well, I was born in Vancouver, in 1957, and my mother was a piano player, not professionally, but she played for the church, and we had a big upright piano in our dining room. And when she would play, I would get up on the bench and I would kind of mimic what she was doing. And so I think she thought, well, he's got a pretty good ear. He seems to kind of got the timings pretty good. Let's sign him up. So there was a very cute girl, well, probably 19 at the time, who was a music teacher that lived about three doors down. I was all of 4 years old. So my mom introduced me to her, and thus began my musical education. And she was great. She encouraged me to learn things by ear. So I'd hear something on the radio, and then she would listen to what I did. There was also a formal classical aspect of what I did too. So, you know, Bach and Beethoven and Chopin and Debussy and all that typical classical repertoire. I definitely added a lot of that over the years. So I went from 4 years old to 18 years old, at which point I graduated from what's called the Royal Conservatory of Toronto. And that was kind of the end. At that point, you could either become a teacher or you could become a professional musician. You would have this ARCT degree. I still have it hanging in my studio. And during that time, I didn't really listen to a lot of other music. One album that did catch my ear was something called Switched On Bach, which was done by an artist named, her name was Walter Carlos. She transitioned into a female, Wendy Carlos. And, but this album was basically a recreation of Bach compositions on the Moog synthesizer. And I loved Bach. This was an absolute epiphany. This was a complete explosion in my creative juices in terms of what I thought about, you know, music. It just the marriage of technology and this beautiful music, and that really activated something in me. And then a friend of mine, his father was a jazz piano player, and he was a drummer. And he said, "I got to introduce you to some music that." He knew I was a bit of a classical music snob, as it were. And he says, "I think you're going to like this." So he lent me a couple of his Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums. And again, the switch went on. And I was like, okay, this is incredible stuff here. This has got the rock, the nobility of the classical, and yet the virtuosity that's embedded in that music is profound. And so back to your comment earlier, Claudio, about your turntable. My dad bought me a turntable that had a cassette recorder built into an FM AM radio also. So I slowed down the LP records to half speed, recorded those on a cassette, and then I'd sit there and transcribe Keith Emerson's parts onto manuscript. For days on end, I would do that because I just loved it so much. And so I did that for a while, and then I never really thought that I was going to get into music as a full-time profession. I went back to university, I went to university, did sciences for 2 years, and then basically ran out of money, and then moved to Calgary. And that links up to the story I told earlier about how, you know, the band formed. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of it. My mom was probably my grandfather was also a big influence on me. He worked at a lumber mill, and his undying passion was classical music. And he taught me a lot about the nuances of opera and, you know, German versus Russian music. And so he was a big influence on me as well.
Yeah, you mentioned, of course, you know, Keith Emerson. Were there any other rock keyboard players that were an influence on you?
Yeah, I mean, Rick Wakeman, the you know, the Eight Wives of Henry VIII, and his contribution to Yes, and Patrick Moratz. And then I got into Oscar Peterson and started transcribing him. He's a Canadian. I got a chance to meet him actually we have an awards ceremony up here called the Juno Awards. It's kind of the Canadian version of the Grammy Awards.
Yeah.
And back in 1982, and I think we still hold the record for the most Junos won in a single year by an artist. He was sitting 2 tables over. Oscar Peterson was sitting 2 tables over. and I couldn't keep my eyes off him. I mean, he was like God is sitting there, like next to me, and so after the third one, he was kind of looking at me, and we locked eyes for a sec. So I went, okay, this is die, do or die. I'm gonna go over and introduce myself. So I went over, shook his hand, and he said, "Congratulations, you're very popular right now." I said, "Yeah, we're enjoying this moment, Oscar." I said, "I just want to tell you, man, you have been such an inspiration. Your technical proficiency and your choice of notes and the stories you tell on piano." I said, "Thank you." And he says, "Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure." So
That's
that was-
terrific.
yeah,
I remember when I met Rick Wakeman for the first time, it was like a little kid in the presence of Santa Claus. You know, I was just like, I was such a Yes fan, and of course still am. And at that time period, I was listening to his solo music. So I listened to Journey to the Center of the Earth and Six Wives of King Henry VIII,
right,
and I enjoyed myself so much on his solo tours. When he would come around.
right,
And,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Me,
I go see Yes. They played Vancouver once in a while. They also had a keyboard player named Patrick Moratz, and he was
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
yeah, the jazz influence right there.
yeah, very much so. Yeah, yeah. He played
He
some
was
great.
he was a really spectacular keyboard player. Like like those riffs he would play, just mind-boggling to me.
Oh, Sound Chaser. Like, where's that coming from? Like,
Yeah.
And the minimum.
and the Gates of Delirium. Like, oh man, epic prog rock or what? I mean, that to me is
It's
just
funny you say that because Chris Squire told me many times, you remind me of Patrick Moraz, not Rick Wakeman.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, Claudio.
I have
I've
like
heard you playing.
definitely.
my style of playing is similar to Patrick Moraz and Rick Wakeman.
Yeah, I can
Right.
see that. I can see that.
oh, that's a
You know,
compliment.
we have similar stories because my family have a piano that they bought from the Italian family, and it was there in the house. I used to play soccer, and I went to audition for this team in Argentina. I was 12 years old, so I couldn't see the ball. I mean, I was too tired to run. Like I was out of shape, so I missed my chance and was crying. Then I went to the piano. I slowly started to play the black notes, Oh, they sound good. And I learned Imagine, from John Lennon, and that's it. All my sisters study and become teachers. I'm the only one that didn't study.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I,
Became musical educators.
yeah, they all 4 sisters I have, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they told me to go to school, to learn, and I got bored the first week. I already was playing, so I didn't want to go through all the process,
It's
Yeah,
it's
well, it would have been redundant for you. Probably a lot of like the first year would have been stuff you already knew. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was boring. So
yeah. I've heard you're playing, Claudio, and you're definitely. I mean, he's a great player, and I've heard his production work. Claudio's a great production guy too. Especially in the melodic hard rock arena.
right.
Yeah. So we're
well, I like fusion. I like jazz fusion too. I mean, I used to play like Jeff. I used to play the Jeff Beck stuff, all the stuff, with John Hammer.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. That was Quadrant Days. I remember I put that album on once, and it was like, holy, some amazing stuff. Yeah. All that. I mean, that all had a place in my record collection. The Mahavishnu Orchestra and
Yeah.
all those guys.
Chick Corea, all those people.
Yeah. Great stuff.
It's
Herbie
amazing.
Hancock.
You never
Herbie
can tell.
Hancock.
You never really can tell the influences on a player. It's always interesting. Usually interesting to find out who inspired them.
Right. Right. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Because then it sort of makes things clearer when you listen to them sometimes, or
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. That a quick comment on that was talking to Billy Powell of Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
And I never ever. I asked him about his background, like how did you get into playing? And I was expecting to hear more about gospel and classical music, perhaps. Since in Leonard Skinner he was mainly like a honky tonk kind of player, but right away he said Rick Wakeman. Yes,
Wow.
Yes was his favorite band, and Rick Wakeman inspired him to play keyboards. I'm like, what are you doing in Leonard Skinner? But
Surprising.
It's a gig.
yeah, but he was such a great player. He had never played honky tonk style piano before Leonard Skinner, and that's what he brought to the band. It's amazing.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we did shows with those guys, and yeah, they were fantastic. Their sound quality was absolutely brilliant. Very true to the recordings.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time, guys. Just have a couple more questions. I wanted to launch us into uh, talking about your film and TV composing career. Yeah, how did you get started in film and TV composing?
So 1993 arrived, and we had been playing over in Europe, and we had been everywhere. We had played everywhere, and I was really looking forward to having a break. So I called up the guys and I said, "Hey, man, I need a break, and I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I want to try some other things in my life." And they were like, "Okay, man, yeah, good luck. We're not sure what we're going to do." So that's at that point I kind of dove into learning the craft of writing for TV, film, and I did a lot of production work too for Jingle Company here in Vancouver. That was good. That was very educational. And then I got into doing documentaries but the first film I did was I think it was 1992. It was a film with Bridget Nielsen in it called Chained Heat 2. And that was kind of a one of those women in prison kind of movies. You know?
I don't remember that movie.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, nothing too terribly, off-putting about it. It was, basically a chick flick, or not a chick flick, but a chick fest, I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna gonna say the wrong thing here, but it was shot in, believe it was shot in Czechoslovakia, which isn't even Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic. And it was a beautiful setting. It was all done in Europe. And I was approached by the producer who had heard some stuff I was working on and said, "Oh, you'd be great for this gig." So that was the first film I did. And then I got invited to do another film. And then it started to kind of roll along. And then I was doing did a little cartoon series, and oh gosh, bunch of different little fiddly bits of songs, but it all kind of added up to my education as a composer for that medium. And so I've done I guess 5 years ago, I did a feature documentary called River Blue, and just another one called The Riverman. Worked on many docu-series. So mostly documentaries, not a lot of drama, but kind of music that has the role of keeping your attention, but not, you don't want to get in the way of dialogue or the story or anything like that. That's kind of the art. If you can sum it up in well, you want to create your own voice, but you need to, the priority is the story. And so as much as you want to throw in some Beethoven greatness, it might not necessarily call for that. So you just have to, kind of be humble about your contribution to the process, the creative process when it comes to TV and film.
Gotcha. I imagine it'd be a lot of soundscapes and like sounds in general, as opposed to melody and riff.
Yeah, it's not so much that anymore. I mean, back in the first film I did, it was a lot of melodies, like big horns and orchestral kind of stuff, and
Orchestration, yeah.
yeah. And now it's a lot of it is a lot of just effects and but that's a whole art in and of itself too. And I have a lot of respect for those guys because they're taking the composition art form to a new level, and they're keeping it current, but they're also, ultimately staying out of the way of the story. They're if anything, my I guess requirement for a good film score is that you hardly notice it. You find yourself emotionally moved, but it doesn't necessarily stand out, and so it's part of the story, and it's an integral part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
So would you say with film and TV composing, is it possible to make a decent income doing that?
I think at a certain level it is. There's so many things going on right now with AI. I you know, I we're at this point in our cultural evolution of what we put value on, and I think we're going to get to a point where, I mean, the large language models are eating all this stuff up as we speak. They're learning soundtracks. They're learning the correlation between dialogue and soundtracks. They're learning all this stuff. There is a possibility that we'll get to a point in the future where a director who has a low budget will say, okay, I'm going to go on to aisoundtrack.com. I'm going to upload my film, and this, server farm is going to basically create a really good soundtrack for me. That, I'm not ruling that out. The thing is that as a society, do we put value on that? Do we go, oh yeah, that's amazing? Or do we go, no, there's something inherently wrong with that because it's not made by a human, it's not felt by a human. So do I give it the same value as I would with a real life composer? And it's a interesting paradox that I think we're going to get to.
Yeah, definitely.
I say no.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right.
Say no.
Yeah.
Say no to AI.
Yeah.
Say no to drugs. Say no to AI.
It's I hadn't really thought about that, Doug. Yeah, that's the first time I've thought about that idea, that the film composer could be replaced by AI. And I guess we're going to find out. Pretty much that's how I know. Some on-air personalities are already saying it's already possible right now to replace an on-air personality with AI.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're like probably not going to have jobs much longer. 5 years, 10 years, and
unless somebody pull the plug and there's no more computers and people will go crazy.
It's just all part of, it's a huge experiment in humanity, and so here we are, but it's always reassuring. Like, I guess we can wrap this up, is that I go out on stage every night when we play, and we're humans, and there's humans out in the crowd. I can't see getting to a point where there's like these AI, bots that are out there cranking it out, and people getting excited about that. It's like, no, our humanity is so valuable, and we
feeling
that.
Yeah,
that, So
I hope so, Doug. That would be a pretty scary thought to think about, being a day when human beings don't gather to hear music.
Yeah. Oh God, that's kind of a sad day in humanity's history, but I think we're a long ways off. And there's a lot of I think it's like anything. It's like, back in the day when the printing press was invented, they probably thought, oh no, now everybody's going to be able to read. Now what are we going to do? Well, I think each generation, each millennia has its own set of these turning points, and we're at one right now with AI. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how we proceed.
Yeah, I do see the possible value of the Oasis. If you're familiar with that concept, from Ready Player One, the movie Ready Player One,
Yes.
the Oasis. Yeah, I could see the value of like everyone gathering in the Oasis and watching a band. That would be an interesting thing. Imagine Loverboy in a virtual reality scenario, playing to people all around the world in a virtual reality.
Only when you're dead, maybe you can do that. But...
Yeah, it's interesting.
I have a friend of mine who has cerebral palsy, and he's in a wheelchair, and it's very difficult for him to get around. I can imagine if he was equipped with a, like a Apple, AirView or a
virtual reality thing,
that was provided to him, that would be such a game changer for him. So, there's silver linings. There's always a plus and a negative in all of these new technologies. So,
yeah. Hey, Claudio, we're just about to wrap things up.
I have two questions.
I wanted to flip it over to Claudio here. He had a question or two.
So, who was your biggest influence when you were growing up on music? I mean, like bands or players? I don't know which ones you want to put on.
I'd say, and to this day he still is Johann Sebastian Bach.
All right.
Yeah, he's. I don't think there's ever been a composer with the prodigiousness, the volume of work, and the quality of work, and the movement, the mathematical beauty mixed with the aesthetic beauty of the. I mean, musical language is so hard to describe in our language. but you feel it when it's there and it speaks to me. And Bach has always moved me tremendously that way.
Well, we have to clear that up a little bit because it's a guy named by Sebastian Bach that is playing metal music. Make sure that people know
His
that you're
parents
talking
had a
about-
good sense of humor, I think.
Make sure that you talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the
No,
one
this is Johann. Put Johann in front. Oh, hey, Sebastian Bach's a good singer, man. I think he's a great singer.
I know.
But yeah, so that, I would say that, and then maybe Keith Emerson would probably be in the modern era for prog rock. He was definitely the guy for me. So
Yeah. So my second question was, if you ever hear about that interview that your guitar player did in Guitar Player magazine.
where he said a few things.
He said, should I say it or not?
I think you can say it. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
We've talked about it.
Because I went to, you guys play at Metropolis, I think, in Montreal one time. And I went there backstage and I went to him and said, so you're the one that say the keyboards are like condoms and you only use them when you need them?
What did you say?
Keyboards are like condoms and you only use them when you need them.
Yeah.
You remember that one?
So, oh yeah, no, somebody called me up and said, did you see that interview in the Guitar Player magazine? And so I read it and I was like, and I called him. I said, why did you say that? I said, am I not a valuable member of this team? And he was like, Doug, I said it out of half joking. And I said it because this is my solo album. And I chose not to use a lot of keyboards and basically apologized to me.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Shit gets said sometimes and you just have to, but no, I get your point.
It was funny, actually.
Are you serious? What? Oh my God. Yeah. Anyways, so
Don't worry about it. Just
grudges are not a good thing to carry. They're too heavy. So.
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Fortunately, we all know in Loverboy anyway, keyboards are a very integral part of the sound.
Thank you, Cole. Appreciate you saying that, man.
It's absolutely true. Yeah.
That was a great show with Sammy Hagar. I can hear everything perfectly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Very
Definitely
true.
nice.
All right. Well, Doug, that does bring us to the end of our time here. Thanks for being our guest today on the Rock
Thanks
Music
for having me. I
Alliance.
really enjoyed this session, man. It's great. You guys are real fun to talk to.
I'm Cole Coleman, and for Claudio Pesavento, the Rock Music Alliance, and the RMA Awards, thanks for watching and listening. Visit us at rockmusicalliance.com and check out this year's RMA Awards for rock, metal, and progressive rock music.